We share a lot of things, both of which is our love for music, but we also talk about a lot of things. She's somebody that I talk to almost every day. But she's a very special person. She's a very special person to Jamaica. She has been regarded as an icon of Jamaican musical culture. She operates in a wide range of artistic activities, and she's very precious to Jamaica, and so I feel very honored and very special to have this opportunity to talk with her. So, Miss Marge, hi. Good to be here with you. So one of the first things I want to ask you is, and it's an obvious question, everybody asks this. I sometimes get fed up when people ask it of me, which is how you got started. But in Marge's case, it's an important question to ask because she operates on so many different levels of artistic activity. And so just to hear from her how it was that she got started in this very long and eclectic and diverse career. So Marjorie, can you give us a little insight as to how you actually got started?
Well, my musical life, I have had a number of, how should I say, fortuitous chances, opportunities, all of this sort of thing. And right away at the beginning of my life, I was born into a very musical community. I lived on Collins Green Avenue, which was between Crossroads and Halfway Street. So that centrality made things very interesting because I was surrounded by a slew of music teachers who had studios in that general area. At the top of Collins Green Avenue, there was Miss Brenda Smythe, who had a large school. A little further to the south of that was Mrs. Packer. And to the north of that was Mrs. Delgado, who taught the violin, and Miss Eneva, Faye Eneva, who taught voice. And right at the corner of Central Road and Halfway Tree Road was my Aunt Ina, Miss Helps. Miss Ina Helps, an amazing music teacher who allowed you to do the things that interested you, that excited you, so long as you prepared the repertoire that she gave you and that you practiced your pieces for examination. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My mother played the piano and the violin, and I never heard her until I was 35. She stopped when I was born. She had studied with Aubrey Ballin, who was a well-known organist and pianist, and she had done the violin as well. Well, we used to pluck the violin strings like it was a guitar until it gave up life, and when we had it repaired and so on, I gave it to Peter Ashburn, who would find use for it. My parents were out. My brother, who was a bit of a bookworm, was babysitting me, and so he didn't pay me any mind. He figured that I would entertain myself. And the piano was open, my sister played the piano, and I managed to climb up on the stool. And he said, I didn't know anything about this. In introducing me at a concert once, he said, he told the story, and it was the first time I was hearing it, that he heard the piano being played, and there was something that was coherent about what he was hearing. So he said, it's not possible, it's only me and the baby at home. And he went, and I was there pong-ponging away on the piano. But I was surrounded by music. We had somebody to the right next door who played popular music and jazz. Up the road was somebody who played stride piano. 2 houses above him was the late composer and international pianist Oswald Russell. Further up the road was a saxophone player. On Beechwood Avenue, we had the close by, less than a block away, were the Barrett family. So it was just being totally surrounded by music. So I couldn't help but try to play some of the things that I heard. And then I went to Miss Helps at age 5.5, and she put me in the percussion band. So she is the one to blame for my drumming and my percussion and this kind of thing. So I started on the triangle and the bells, and then I graduated to the tambourine, and from the tambourine to the drum. And when I was 6, I became the conductor of the band. So she's responsible for a lot of things in my life. So that is how it got started.
My goodness,
And I did all the examinations up to grade 8, and she wanted me to go on to the LRSM, but I was just turning 14, and I had to do senior Cambridge. I'm dating myself by... It was senior Cambridge in those days. It hadn't reached GCE yet. And I couldn't do the two things. And my parents insisted that, hello, the schoolwork has to be done. So I gave up lessons at that time.
So it's clear that all of these people that were around you had this major influence on what you eventually became. I was going to ask you how you got started on the drums, but you just explained how you got started on the drums, because that was always a curiosity to me as to how she got started on the drums. So Miss Helps is to be blamed for that.
Yes, but of course what we were playing didn't have a great deal of rhythm, you know what I mean?
It was banging away.
It was, no, we didn't bang. She would have objected to that. It was a matter of regular subdivision of the beat. The irregular subdivision and the syncopation and that sort of thing came later in my teens when I was exposed to Ronan Critchlow. And what was the nucleus of what became National Dance Theatre Company. And there was an extra drum lying around, and I grabbed it and started to play, because I used to, when I was in primary school, I got a whack or two for playing drum rhythms on the desk, you know. I had the fortune of my grandmother living in the hills of St. Catherine, so I used to hear a lot of drumming, but not allowed to go and listen any close. I heard it in the distance. My aunt had a farm in St. Thomas, so I used to hear at night. What I later discovered many years later was Kumina.
Wow.
You know, so all of that was seeping into my consciousness.
Yeah. You've had some interesting influences along the way that have affected your stylistic approach to the work that you have composed and that you have created. Can you speak to us about some of who those influences were? Starting with, apart from Miss Phelps.
Yes. I must mention first Mr. Cecil Sonny B. Bradshaw, who was in charge of the record library at the JBC. And at the time also, JBC had an orchestra that used to play for various shows and so on, and television productions. And there was time. You see, they were being paid to do that, so they didn't have to worry too much about having to have too many gigs to be able to survive. So they decided to deal with the youngsters around, young musicians who they were wanting to lead in a particular path. So they started the jazz workshop, and I went when I was 15 and learned to play vibes. Mr. Taddy Mowat, who was a great
bass player,
vibes player, and also an incredible bass player. He taught me vibes, and Mr. Bradshaw taught jazz harmony and repertoire. So that was a very strong influence. I also was taken very seriously by, Oswald was a student of Miss Helps as well. So he was about 12 years older than me, but he was held up as a gold standard. So, you know, when his compositions were published and so on, I was so terribly excited about it all and tried desperately to be able to get those rhythms right and so on. Another very strong influence on me was Barry Davies. Barry lived in front of me when he got married to Marjorie Edwards, who had studied music in Canada. And so that was another very strong influence. He was pushing me in the direction of more modern art music. My composers, the music that I really loved deep inside my soul was Bach. You notice how many of us are taken with the Baroque. Beethoven for his strong chordal movement and progressions, incredible. And Debussy is a kind of a strange mixture, but when I did my first concert at the Institute of Jamaica, those were the composers. So there was that inside my soul, and then Barry pushing me into the modern music. And then I went to UWI and played pan. So I had an opportunity to really absorb the music of the Caribbean. I had been listening as a child to Lord Beginner and Lord Kitchener and that kind of thing, and attempting to play some of that on the piano. So it's a myriad of influences that has contributed to all of the music that I arrange and that I compose. I compose in several genres and idioms and so on. And it's because of this fortuitous kind of bucking up on things, opportunities to hear, to be exposed, and that sort of thing. And then after UWI, I went to teach at KC, the University of North Street. But I was in the teaching in the junior school over at Melbourne Park. I taught Spanish to first and second form and was asked to teach music. And to help with the choir, Barry Davies pulled me into that. And when he left, I helped Mr. Forrest with the choir for many a year. So then I learned about training voices, absorbing it from being a part of the whole exercise. And
you were with the, I want to get to the National Dance Theatre Company.
Oh.
The National Dance Theatre Company was her home for 40 years or more. And I think that experience must have had a major effect on your composing style, your composer's style, and your growth as a composer. Because I believe you had to prepare material for the dance through the NDTC singers. Please talk to us about that.
Yes,
and the influence that Nettleford must have had on you.
I'm a procrastinator, and although I had played for pantomime in the Mapletop Pool Orchestra, I played for 2 pantomimes and been exposed to that kind of theater. Rex was somebody who challenges and cajoles, and every so often he would, drop a little word, Miss Marge, I need a little something to insert in this dance and this kind of thing. So I was pushed and cajoled and challenged and all of this sort of thing. So I started arranging the folk material that was being sung and so on. And then he kept insisting that he wanted something that had rhythm, a particular kind of movement. And for my sins, I did dance. I did ballet for 8 years, and then I did modern dance for 4. So there was an understanding of what a dancer needs to hear when they're dancing. What are the elements that move the bodies, and also the kind of instruments and sound that appeals to different parts of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it really was a very serious learning experience, and I was pushed screaming into it.
You have composed some I wouldn't call them religious material, but some spiritual material, some material that speaks to the soul. You have composed material in that area.
Yes,
Talk to us about how your spirituality has informed the works that you have composed.
Well, I was brought up in the church. I used to teach Sunday school from I was 14. The Anglican Church, St. Luke's in Crossroads. And that affected me quite a bit. I started playing for the Sunday school, and then they pushed me in. They gave me the babies to teach. So there was always that, and my mother was a very serious Christian lady. Mm-hmm. So she started me off with getting little books and things from Unity. Mm-hmm. So I started reading Wee Wisdom, and as I got older, she would buy the Unity things for me, and so on. So there's always been that sort of underlying. Of course, there were the times when it got in the way of enjoying life and so on, but it was always a very strong supporting base.
I don't think you didn't enjoy your life, because sometimes I hear some stories with you and a certain friend of yours that when you two get talking
you see, when people know you too well,
when you two get talking about stuff that you got up to as teenagers, we won't tell these people how bad you were.
No, but the Lord forgives. Yeah, so I started writing settings of the Psalms and canticles and so on fairly early, but they didn't see the light of day. They were there, and Mrs. Joyce Layla was leader of the singers, the NDTC singers, and she passed on in 1978. She had been also the choir master for the Church of St. Mary the Virgin, and I had written a mass. I hadn't completed it. There were 2 things that were not written, but they had been using it in the church. It was very exciting to hear it being used. And after she passed on, we had a service of Thanksgiving and a performance in tribute to Joyce. And that became our Easter Sunday morning. That started our Easter Sunday morning performances.
That's the NDTC Easter
yes,
morning.
and we used to use a lot of existing works, and it would be dance, then the singers, then dance, and the singers right through a whole an hour and 15 to 20 minutes of a performance at 6 o'clock on Easter Sunday. And then Vibart Seaforth, of blessed memory as well, he became chorus master of the singers. And he challenged me. I'm always being challenged. He said, you cannot finish that mass because after so many years, you're not going to be able to write in the same style. It's going to be awkward. And I said, don't push me, Vibart. At that time, we were both teaching here at the School of Music. And so I finished the mass, I handed it to him, and we did it in its entirety that Easter Sunday. But I have always said that the spiritual music, the religious music that I write, I can't take credit for, because I have been a conduit. It comes, some of them come complete, and you have to write like mad to get it down before it leaves you. And so on. There's some things, where you have a basic idea and then you apply the compositional devices that you learn, the imitation and diminution and all of this sort of thing, and turning the phrases upside down and backwards and all of this kind of thing. So there are times when you will write something that's basic and then you extend it and so on. So, but the company really facilitated my growth and development, because there were so many demands to satisfy.
Absolutely.
Because each choreographer had a different style, different way of working, and so on. So
and required different things, because they're quite extensive. I mean, she's quite phenomenal in the number of stuff that she has received. We're going to start with her Order of Distinction, which is top of the list. And then your Musgrave Medal, the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence as a Music Teacher, City of Kingston Award for Music and Culture, Jamaica Cultural Development Commission for Long Service, the Jamaica International Utrius Festival Award for Pioneering Music in Theatre, the Kiwanis Club of Kingston for music, the Stella Gregory Award in 2008 from the Seroptimus Club, the Jamaica Federation of Musicians Award for work in television, for educational work in television, the Association of Adult Education, the UWI Guild of Graduates Pelican Award, the Institute of Jamaica Centenary Award, the Jamaica Music Industry Award for jazz artists of that particular year, the Jamaica Music Industry Award again for music in theatre, and the Silver Award, Best Supporting Actress in Theatre. And those are just some of them. Her output is quite extraordinary, and she has excelled in all of these various levels. I'm going to ask you, of all the things that you are involved in, you've conducted the pantomime orchestra, you've accompanied some of the best singers in the country. I put up my hand as one of them. You arrange for people, you compose, you write, you dance, you sing, you teach, you act, you've written plays, you've done all of these things. I know the heart, the artistic heart, is one of those. I understand it, because I'm kind of the same. When you're an artist, you tend to do all kinds of things, because you can't, just one form of activity won't satisfy, so you do a lot of different things to get it out. Is there any one of these things that you are involved in that gives you greater satisfaction, or is it all equal, or is it just what you're doing on the moment? Because sometimes that's what it is too, it's what you're doing in the moment, but maybe there is something special that you gravitate to more than anything else?
This may sound strange. I enjoy performing, but really what turns me on is my work as an accompanist. In different idioms and this kind of thing. That is very satisfying, because there are times when you may be working with a singer and they forget a bar and something drops out and so on. What you can do as an accompanist to bring them and put them back online without the audience recognizing that something went wrong. I think what I enjoy most is being an accompanist, and perhaps a little below that would be playing in ensemble. I have played with groups of various sizes, trio, quartet, Whylie rhythm. It was very elastic. Sometimes I had 6 people, at other times I had 2.
Jamaica Big Band with its 20
Jamaica
pieces.
Big Band with 22, that kind of thing. Being I don't know how to describe it. getting the best out of people, being a facilitator. That is what I think I enjoy most.
Well, I can speak to having been the beneficiary of that. I have worked with Marjorie for so long, and she is just absolutely the best accompanist that anybody could want to work with. She is, for me, the swingingest jazz piano player there is in this country. For me, that is my opinion. She is the swingingest and the most sympathetic accompanist that any performer could want to work with. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been my pleasure to talk with Marjorie today, and I hope that you have enjoyed hearing about her. A round of applause for the wonderful, the one and only Miss Marjorie Whylie.
Thank you.